if you are as appalled as I am, and what you can do to uphold the dignity and the moral responsibility of our presidency. Because there is immeasurable concern of how that will affect us as a nation and the future of our generations.
Thank you very much for your question. When I see actions with which I am in strong disapproval, I speak out against them. For example, when the Access Hollywood matter came to the public, I was very vigorous in my criticism, and that is a matter of record. There have been several other instances, and for example, the instance that comes to mind at the moment to me is the Charlottesville matter, where I was very critical, and I believe that there was no moral equivalency, and that I refer you to my remarks at that time. I will continue to speak out where I think the president is wrong, not only on policy, as I've mentioned, the two important issues, health care and the tax bill, but also regarding matters that you have raised. And I want you to know that I certainly will take back to Washington your comments and the point of view that you have expressed, and that I hope that in the future there can be greater civility, and that certainly includes greater civility on the part of Mr. Trump. And I try always to lead by example, and I think that is an important component of the responsibilities I hold, and thank you very much for your question.
Will you boldly speak out on the floor about this issue?
I certainly will speak out. I don't know whether I will speak out on the floor. That's possible. I certainly will speak out, and I have several forums where I can make my views known publicly, including this forum this morning, as I will intend to continue to do so.
Can you give me an example? My last thing is, can you give me an example of what you will do next beyond this forum being aired about this issue? Just your next step.
I will continue always to conduct myself in a civil manner, and I will...
In a public way, I'm sorry. In a more public and expressive way.
I think I try to express myself civilly, not only privately, but publicly. I hope that I do not have to address a situation like Charlottesville in the future, I hope, but if there were such a situation, I certainly would speak out vocally and publicly. I believe the president would be better served if he tweeted far less than he does. I understand why he tweets, to address the American people directly, but I think he tweets too much, and on occasions I think he tweets inappropriately. I support the president when I think he's right, and I oppose the president when I think he's wrong. And I know we're getting into policy now, but I've tried to answer the question on my views on the president personally. The two principal issues, there have been quite a few issues, but the two principal issues that we've addressed in Congress over the last year and a couple months, the health care issue. I didn't vote for the health care bill because I didn't think that it was in the best interest of New Jersey. And that bill did not become law. It passed the House but did not pass the Senate. And the reason I didn't vote for it is that I didn't want to see the expanded Medicaid diminished in any way. 500,000 New Jerseyans have received health care coverage through the expansion of Medicaid. 31 of 50 states expanded Medicaid, and New Jersey was one of those states. And then, more recently, in legislation that did become law, I opposed the tax legislation for several principal reasons. I thought that it would expand the debt over the next 10 years, and I tend to be a deficit hawk. And then number two, there is the important issue, the very important issue here in New Jersey, of the continued deductibility of state and local taxes, and I think that that should have remained in the code as it is. I would hope that the president in the future tweets less, and
probably no chance of that.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Let me say I would hope. And in my conduct of public policy, I try to be respectful of everybody, those who agree with me and those who disagree with me. I never diminish anybody by calling that person a bad name or by rhyming his or her name. Although there are those who have rhymed my name. And let me say that to those who may disagree with me politically, I point out that I would never rhyme a name first, ever first. I, of course, respond if someone has disparaged me or my name, and I think each of us should treat everybody else in society in a respectful way. I have always tried to do that. And after all, we do meet here in Bridgewater in February, which is Black History Month. And let us all be reminded together of the famous words of Martin Luther King, that each of us should be judged not based upon the color of our skin, but the content of our character.
Tell the president.
And I believe that I have always conducted myself that way, and I will continue to do so. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
I understand why there is a temporary security clearance until final security is achieved, but certainly by this time, that person should have had his security completely made final, and that would have proven, I believe, that he should not have been on the White House staff. And I hope that the full facts come out as to whether or not he was misleading other officials at the White House, and let the facts determine that situation. Now, you mentioned the issue in general terms, an extremely important issue in our society, spousal abuse. When I was a very young assemblyman, the first bill of my sponsorship that passed in the state legislature was raising the marriage license fee in New Jersey from $7 to $20. That was about a 200% increase. And the monies derived from that are used in New Jersey to fund domestic violence shelters. That is my legislation, the Lance legislation, that funds domestic violence shelters in New Jersey. I was scared to death on the floor of the Assembly. It was my first bill, and a very senior member of the Assembly pointed out that I was raising the marriage license fee by a significant percentage. It has since been raised again, I believe by Loretta Weinberg of Bergen County, the current majority leader in the state Senate. Also, I believe, with the funding, the additional funding that goes to continue to fund domestic violence shelters. And so I have been involved in this issue for quite some time. I believe that any domestic violence in any way, shape, or form is completely unacceptable. And I hope that, given what I've tried to do on this issue, is an indication that I am serious about it. In Congress this week, this is a related issue, not directly related, but a related issue. We passed legislation in the House saying that regarding sexual harassment suits of members of Congress, no longer in the future will any taxpayer funds be used to fund settlements regarding I spoke on the floor of the House on the legislation. I had introduced a bill myself. It was not my bill that passed, but provisions of my bill were folded into the bill that passed. Congressman Greg Harper of Mississippi, who is the chairman of the House Administration Committee, it was his bill that passed, and I want to give a lot of credit, principal credit perhaps, to a friend of mine on the Democratic side, Congressman Jackie Spear of California, who has worked on this issue for a generation, first in the state legislature in Sacramento and more recently on Capitol Hill. Thank you for your question.
Congressman, as a follow-up, would you go on the House floor and speak out against what's going on in the White House and the domestic abuse from the president right on down?
I certainly will continue to speak out on this issue. I did speak out on the House floor on the sexual harassment issue, and this event is open to the press, and I hope the press will cover my remarks that I believe that it was inappropriate to hire that person, that his temporary clearance should have been decided on full clearance, yay or nay, long before a year into the administration, and that he should not have been hired, but having been hired, he should have been removed long before now.
So following up on the previous person's question, we need somebody to stand up and put their country over their party.
Yes.
Yes.
What will you do to protect Bob Mueller in his investigation? Will you impose legislation to protect the investigation? Because this is serious stuff we're treading into right now.
Thank you. I was the first Republican in the House of Representatives in the United States to suggest that Attorney General Sessions should recuse himself on the Russian investigation. That, not my action, but through the actions of many, including me, Attorney General Sessions did the right thing and he recused himself. And then the Deputy Attorney General became the acting Attorney General, Mr. Rosenstein, and he appointed Robert Mueller as the special counsel. And I applauded that decision, and I have supported Robert Mueller in his work and will continue to do so. You asked a question as to whether there should be legislation in Congress protecting Robert Mueller.
Yes.
Yes, this is the difficulty with that as I see it. I am an attorney and I have practiced constitutional law, and it certainly interests me greatly. This was attempted in 1867 in the statute that was passed, the Tenure of Office statute, passed by the Congress when Andrew Johnson was president, saying that Andrew Johnson, who of course had been Lincoln's second vice president and had never been elected president himself, but became president when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, that the Congress in that era, the Reconstruction Congress, was at odds with Andrew Johnson and passed the Tenure of Office Act, saying that Andrew Johnson could not remove cabinet officers unless the Senate had approved their removal. That is widely believed historically to be unconstitutional, that you cannot have the legislative branch of government doing that. I believe that that is the type of constitutional matter that might come into play here. I understand your point of view and agree with your point of view that Robert Mueller should continue in his important responsibilities. If he were to be asked to leave, The question is, who would ask him to leave? The president could not discharge him directly. It would have to be done, as I understand the law, by the Attorney General. The Attorney General for these purposes is the Deputy Attorney General, Mr. Rosenstein, for reasons I've discussed. Attorney General Sessions is recused from the matter. I doubt that the Deputy Attorney General, in his capacity as acting Attorney General, would do that. And the question is, who would do it? I don't think that it's likely that there would be a high official in the Justice Department who would do it. And I understand all of the dynamics. I don't think that a statute, I don't know, and it would probably go to the Supreme Court, but I don't think that a statute that you suggest, and I understand why you are suggesting it, and I agree with you that Robert Mueller should be protected. I don't know whether a statute, and some have suggested that, would be constitutional based upon our history.
Just find out, do it. Fight for it! I'm going to tell the president.
And I hope and expect that Robert Mueller will continue in his responsibilities, and I believe that hope is an important part of a larger strategy, and I've given you my views as to what I think might be a constitutional impediment, but I certainly agree with the sentiment of your question that his investigation should continue unimpeded, and that I support that investigation.
No hope action.
I believe that there might be a constitutional question based upon the Tenure of Office Act. I want to thank everybody for participating in the town hall meeting this morning. I know that the audience could be doing many things on a Saturday morning. I will continue to be available to the public. We will hold our next town hall meeting, will be a telephone town hall meeting. We do both. And if you are interested in attending, participating in the next telephone town hall meeting, I hope you will sign up on our website. I commend all of you for your public spiritedness, for being interested in the public policy of this nation. Let me repeat, as I said at the beginning, it is my honor to serve you in the Congress, and it is my honor to serve the people of the 7th District in New Jersey. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.